My name is Carol, and I have a pet worm. Now, this ain't your granny's average garden worm. No siree. It lives in my hand. No, I mean, like, it literally lives in my hand. Like, in my hand. I hope you're not eating anything right now. Anyway, I guess I should be a little more specific. It's like a grub of some tropical parasite. I can't remember its name. It's got way too many letters in it. But it's little and, like, I don't know, it's kind of cute, though. Okay, so, like, I accidentally got it when my parents and I were having a vacation on an island, right? And I don't know how it found me, but all I remember is that I was sitting, just chilling in the sand, soaking in the sun, you know, enjoying life. And this parasite mother decided that I was some good pickings for incubating her precious babies. And it would have been a simple thing to just, like, kill it, right? Like, just get a shot, maybe a small incision. But for some reason, my parents decided that, nah, it wasn't for me. And I think that we can all agree, based on this example, that even adults can be total idiots. Anyway, I guess over time it turned out to not be all that bad. I've grown quite fond of the little wormy here, and honestly, I'd rather have him than, the plague. At first, I honestly didn't even realize that anything weird had happened. All there was a strange little bump on my skin, and it took until evening when we were in our hotel room before I even noticed something was up. It was just a little red spot, and I thought it looked like an insect bite. So I just put some ointment on it and totes forgot about it. So we get home, and life goes on. Until a few weeks later when I noticed a decent size difference from my supposed bug bite. And movement. My parents finally came to their senses and freaked the heck out. We rushed to the ER and wow, what a surprise. It's a parasite. Oh, definitely need freaking doctorates to confirm that. Anywhoosies, the fact that it was a singleton was actually the interesting part. Usually there would be a whole swarm of grubbos in there. Maybe my awesome bud killed off all the others. Or maybe Wormy ate his siblings. Metal. Though the fact that there was just one little worm inside me didn't calm my parents. They started screaming and saying that this thing should have been killed and removed right away. Ugh. See what I have to live with? Only Wormy understands me now. And at this point, I figured I was this little dude's mommy now. I couldn't just murder my own child. It was thanks to me and my efforts that it's been fed, housed, and grew so big and strong. So anyway, at school, we had this biology project coming up, right? And, you could choose whatever experiment you wanted to do on it. Just had to be related to, biology and, the world and natural organisms or, whatever. And I figured that I've got a pretty neat little specimen right here, right? And I wasn't about to go get, horse crap and study freaking fertilization or whatever. I have some dignity. Plus, I've got, a real worm in my hand, right here. My baby and I will become champions of the school science projects of all time. So when I noticed that little wormo was starting to get a little bigger, I was like, well, maybe a school science project isn't worth my life. So I should go just make sure that everything's totes cool. So I go to the doctors and I ask them whether little Wormy is going to threaten my life. And they're like, nah, you definitely won't die. I do hate to break it to you. Spoiler alert, I am not immortal that I know of. So I'll die eventually, but not by my wormo. There could be some side effects like weird body temperature, dizziness, and a swollen hand, but nothing too serious. So I was like, hey, good to go. But my parents were less enthused. They said that they were going to kick me out until I got rid of this creature. How could they say that to my baby? Again, need I remind you, they said not to get it looked at earlier, so I don't know what their problem is. I Googled if there's anything that, I need to eat to make sure that my little worm was safe and healthy. I also kept my hand warm by wearing a glove a lot, and I watched it swell. It's a little morbid, but it's also super fascinating. And you know what? It, didn't even hurt. I barely got any of the side effects that was expected. So, win-win. So, anyway, Dave and I became the best bros. I figured he needed a proper name instead of just Wormy. But while I loved Dave. No one else seemed to want to share in the warm, fuzzy feelings. Everyone avoided me and nobody wanted to hang out. There were 2 empty desks around me in every class. I tried to reassure them that the worm was harmless and definitely won't crawl on someone else. Unfortunately, they didn't believe me. So I was left absolutely alone. My classmates, some of them even organized like this weird protest to keep me away from the school cafeteria. And the only person who was sincerely glad that all this was happening was my biology teacher. She saw my deed as something almost heroic. During every biology class, we were exploring all the changes, the growth of the worm and its other parameters and like properties and whatever. So yeah, I became some kind of champion or even the queen of biology class. Meanwhile, my parents started to pack up my stuff. They threatened me, even tried to blackmail and bribe me. They didn't want to understand or support me. I was just disgusting to them. All my attempts to prove that Dave would never hurt me were pointless. And my teacher and I still think that Dave needs several more weeks before he's ready to hatch. My hand looks like this nasty big red glove with a little hole that, like, I guess is his access to oxygen. Oh, I wonder if it's like a window where he can peek his little head out and see the world. It feels like I have to kick out my favorite dog or like a pet turtle. My biology teacher may actually be more interested than even me and spent a lot of time trying to come up with alternative solutions. She said that, like, I can't move in with her because there could be lawsuits or something, even for a couple of weeks. Oh, my poor defenseless little Dave. What will become of him? What life could he have lived? Did his mother make the wrong choice choosing me as his host, the one to nurture Dave and fulfill his destiny? I just don't understand why people can be so mean. It's not their body. What do you guys think? Do you have any other ideas for me? I don't want to be homeless, but I kind of want to see this experiment through, you know?
I'm Carol's mother, and it feels like our daughter went nuts. Just think about it. She got a worm. Maybe we should have bought her a dog. As soon as we saw Carol's swollen hand, we immediately took her to the hospital. We didn't even think that it would be something alive, and she'd want to keep it. Who would do such a thing? Carol always used to be quite an obsessed person. Every time she starts something, she does it perfectly right. I always saw that as her main virtue. But that sweet personality trait ruins her life now. Well, it seemed a bit weird when Carol dove into foreign languages or drawing too much. One summer, she started to read a new book and came out of her room wearing a winter coat and saying that it's freezing outside. That was the moment when my husband and I began to doubt her sanity. But worm? That was too much. How can a sane person willingly agree to grow a worm in his body? Moreover, how can he take care of this thing like some dog or a turtle? I couldn't understand that. Our daughter said she wants to leave the worm. We were in the hospital and she didn't even think about that. The worm caused pain and parasited in her own body. Disgusting. She talked about a school project. Like the teacher gave them a task and the worm is as good as any other animal. It's even more interesting because nobody has done that before. She tried to convince us saying that it didn't hurt her body, and the doctor said it wasn't dangerous for her life. My husband and I were confused at that moment. We didn't know how we should react to such nonsense. And while we were thinking, our daughter just came out of the hospital. Then we hoped Carol would wake up and agree to remove that parasite out of her hand. But Carol didn't change her mind. She even talked to it. I heard her complaining to the worm about her difficult school life, and also about other children refusing to hang out. I was even glad to hear that because I hoped it'll change something in Carol's mind. Time passed, but the worm continued to live off of Carol. Her hand started to look awful. It was swollen and red as sausages in a pot. Carol was coming back from school exhausted with tears in her eyes, though she refused to talk about what was happening. Then we began to notice that Carol looks really sick. She was pale, weak, with big circles under her eyes. She turned from an active and curious girl into some maniac who kept growing that terrible worm inside her body. What if doctors were wrong, and it actually had some influence on her? I don't know, maybe with some hormones. All the careful hints about taking the abomination out of her hand were followed by scandals and fights. We ordered her to go to the hospital. but she just went to her room and kept silent for weeks. Our house looked like some sort of asylum with the laboratory equipment in it. I lost my nerve at the moment when the worm started to hatch. I even don't know how I should call that. It happened during dinner. The worm broke the skin where there used to be a little spot and peeped out. I threw up as well as my husband. Our daughter joyfully clapped her hands saying that the miracle of birth will soon happen. Then I threw up once again. My husband and I had a serious conversation and decided to get rid of that thing. If our daughter appreciates the parasite more than her family and her reputation, that would be her choice, and we're out of all of that. We're actively packing all of her things and preparing to... No, we're not going to kick her out as she thinks. We want to send her to a private clinic where doctors will remove the worm and also fix her mental state. That may sound cruel, but it's not okay to raise the worm in her own hand. Please do write in the comments section what you think about the story and its characters. Like the video, share it with your friends to see the next episodes.